Good afternoon, everyone. Namaste. On behalf of our chairperson, Ms. Priya Gazdar and her committee, I, Rashi Agarwal, Joint Secretary of FLO Hyderabad, extend a warm welcome to our speakers, Ms. Denise Eaton, Ms. Jennifer Larson, Mr. Gareth Owen, who is still to join us, our distinguished past chairs, and fellow FLO members. May I now request everyone to please rise for the national anthem. I kindly request the photographers to refrain from clicking pictures during the national anthem.
Jana Gana Mana Adhinayaka Jaya He Bharat Bhagya Vidhata Punjab Sindh Gujarat Maratha Dravida Utkala Vanga Vindhya Himachala Yamuna Ganga Uchala Jaladhi Taranga तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
Good afternoon, everyone. For the only way in which a durable peace can be created is by worldwide restoration of economic activity and international trade, said James Forrestal, the first US Defense Secretary. This was during World War II in the 1940s, but still holds true today. Borders have become seamless, and businesses large and small are no longer satiated by the local customer. Global alliances and trade are the way to go. Therefore, we have this session today with representatives from the consulates of 3 large economies to help us and our ventures know more about bilateral trade with these countries. I request FLO Chairperson Ms. Priya Gazdar, our distinguished speakers, FLO past chairs Ms. Jyotsna Angara, Ms. Shubhra Maheshwari, Ms. Usha Rani Mane, Ms. Rekha Lahoti, Ms. Ritu Shah, Ms. Manjula Reddy, to please come forward for the lamp lighting. As we light this lamp, may its glow symbolize the illumination of knowledge, inspiration, and positivity in our lives. I request the FLO past chairs to please stay on for a picture with the speakers. Request the speakers to please stay on. And request the core committee for 2024-25, followed by the executive committee to join for a picture.
Was hearing firsthand the stories of a successful angel investor and a startup founder, which gave us valuable perspectives from both sides of the table. The handlooms and health verticals came together to organize a health camp where women weavers of Siddipet and their families learned all about hydration and nutrition for a healthy summer. Free CPP tests were conducted for 41 women. Those with deficiencies will be receiving free supplements over the next few months. Push notifications will be sent to them about taking the meds regularly via a dedicated WhatsApp group. Their levels will be checked again after 2 months to see the progress made. The idea is to build a healthy, happy, and productive community of women weavers, even as we engage with them over upskilling, design development, modern lifestyle interpretations, and new market linkages. In the next few weeks, please look out for an MSME workshop and launch of the Udyam registration drive at Central Government's new MSME campus, Yusufguda. A knowledge session with venture capital giants Subrato Mitra of Axel and Shanti Mohan of Let's Venture. Be there to hear the story of how a homegrown Indian brand is today the poster boy of the e-commerce world. And there's much more. Coming up after that is a tete-a-tete with Arvind Vijay Mohan, luxury brand story craftsman and art investment strategist. MSME is a major thrust area for FLO this year. The first day-long conclave of 2024-25 will center around MSME a few days ahead of the MSME Day on June 27th. The slide reads June 22nd, but I've just got information that it will be on June 24th. And then there is the YFLO event on the possibilities in the yet uncharted blue economy. Dear members, hope you all have renewed your membership by paying the annual fee. If not, please do so at once and lend your support to the organization and our endeavors. As announced before, we will be fully transitioning to the FLO app very soon, so please download it on your mobiles and familiarize yourself with its features. FLO Hyderabad Marketplace is our own advertising medium, so do make use of it to advertise your brand of products and services to our 1100 plus audience. You may also recommend it to your friends outside the FLO community. FLO Business League is another way to pitch your business to our members, where you get to address the audience directly. Reach out to the team if you would like to talk about your brand in person at our events like this. Through our first 2 rounds of interviews, we have an intake of 100 new members. Do encourage friends and family you think are a good fit with FLO to apply for membership. FLO Hyderabad is regularly approached by several prestigious institutions such as MSME, MSME itself, the ministry, Symbiosis, Anurag University and others with invitations to talk at their events, their programs and symposiums. The audience could be graduate or budding entrepreneurs, postgraduate students, working professionals, SHGs, anybody. We would like to pass on those speaking opportunities to all of you who are interested. We will be soon sending out a Google form by filling which you can express your interest to be part of our speakers pool. Do step forward and help in making a significant impact through FLO. We have a handful of stalls left to fill in the weaves, gold and diamond jewelry, silver and gems, lifestyle and food court categories in Style Tattva 2024. Please contact the team if you or any of your friends are interested in booking these last few stalls. Our campaign, FLO Will Vote, on the occasion of Elections Day was a super hit. Thank you to all those who joined our effort in solidarity. Many such campaigns will come your way. Please join us. Recent decades have seen a rush to reduce or remove trade barriers. As a business organization, it is right up FLO's alley to create opportunities for members, British Deputy High Commissioner to Telangana and AP, Mr. Gareth Wynn Owen, and Ms. Denise Eaton, Trade and Investment Commissioner for Austrade in South Asia, for so gracefully agreeing to join us here this afternoon to take us through the trade, business, and entrepreneurial landscape of their respective countries. Joint Secretary Rashi Agarwal will take the session.
Leads health team in Australia for 15 years. She brings 35 years of business experience working in both the private and public sectors. She has a detailed and practical understanding of global trade and investment to deliver advice, commercial opportunities, and market information and insight. She has worked across the globe in...
It's my honor to welcome Ms. Jennifer Larson. To introduce Ms. Jennifer Larson, Ms. Jennifer Larson is the Consul General in Hyderabad, India, Assistant Secretary of the Office of India, Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Bhutan and Maldives Affairs. She also served 4 years as the Deputy Principal Officer in Mumbai, India. prior to completing a year-long course at the National Defense University in June 2016. She was a spokesperson at the Bureau of Near-Rad and graduation work at the University of California, Berkeley, in comparative literature. That's Arabic, Spanish and French, and Middle East 2022. He is responsible for all the aspects of the UK engagement in the two Telugu states. As the Deputy High Commissioner, his role includes promoting business and trade links, strengthening scientific and education cooperation, and working with partners to tackle climate change, ensure a transition to clean and sustainable growth. Prior to this appointment, Mr. Gareth led the work on securing UK's develops the Indo-Pacific TILT framework, which was published in March 2021 in the UK government's integrated review. Gareth has worked in Russia, Armenia, Iran and Azerbaijan for the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office.
We say ladies first, but because there's an overwhelming majority of ladies, let's start with Gareth. And let's address the elephant in the room right away. So Gareth, how have these two significant events impacted trade relations between UK and India? One is, of course, Brexit, and the second, for India, more importantly, the son-in-law of corporate India, Rishi Sunak, becoming British Premier.
You'll forgive me, I'll just focus on the first part of that question rather than the second part. Brexit, yes, and the impact on our trade links with India. Right at the offset, when we were preparing for Brexit, we kept talking about we need to do more trade with the Indo-Pacific, and in particular some of the growing economies in the region, and in particular India. And I think to answer the question, I'll probably use some figures. So just before COVID, so let's go for 2019, which is probably the most realistic, bilateral trade between the UK and India was worth around $30 billion. And now it's reaching $50 billion already. So that's a significant upturn in our bilateral trade, which shows you, thank you, which shows you how we have pivoted towards the Indo-Pacific and India in particular. It wasn't just nice words of where we were being optimistic. We've actually shown through our trade links with India over the last 5 years. It was a genuine ambition, and we are reaching that ambition. We have ambition further on, 2030, 100 billion by 2030. But at the moment, we're on a good track, and hopefully, as many of you know, we are negotiating an FTA with India, and hopefully once that is agreed, the pace will become even faster. So very, very optimistic.
Thank you. Those are very optimistic numbers, and if the FTA is in place, I'm sure that those numbers will grow very rapidly. Jennifer, US-India trade has grown nearly 10 times since 2001 to about 200 billion USD in 2023. In light of this, do you see the possibility of a comprehensive bilateral trade agreement or something like a free trade agreement being signed by our two nations?
Thank you. Yes, it's been staggering, actually, the pace at which the bilateral trade between our two countries has taken over the past decade. It's 10 times what it was. It's just, there's no other country who has such a robust relationship without a bilateral trade agreement. And so I credit that to the strength of our economies and to the strength of our democracies and to the strength of innovation that both countries here are extremely invested in. As for an FTA, I mean, the answer is not now. It's politically not the right environment in our country with elections both here and also in the United States. It's been talked about often before, and we've just never gotten past the points of friction. There may be some scope for something more nuanced or in particular sectors, and this is definitely something that we should be exploring, especially when we are predicting our bilateral trade in the next possibly 5 years to go up to $500 billion. So these are numbers that are, I think are wonderful. Just really a good expression of how much we work together.
So, with or without free trade agreement, we are still going to hit that 500 billion USD. Wow. Good news for all of it. What's the long-term vision for you?
That's the key document to help even strengthen further bilateral trade. And negotiations are going very well. We've had 14 rounds in just under 2 years, which is that's quick for a trade agreement. We're still not there yet. There are still some small tricky issues that we need to overcome. But as both our prime ministers have said, we want a deal. We want an ambitious deal, and but we also need a deal that is in.
So, with or without free trade agreement, we are still going to hit that 500 billion USD. Wow. Good news for all of us here who are looking at setting up, businesses abroad in the US. So please be alert to all those news snippets that you have to read, and Economic Times, please subscribe. Denise, in 2023, Australian Premier Anthony Albanese led a trade delegation to India, which, by the way, was the largest ever to leave Australian shores. What is the significance of this in terms of business between both countries?
Thank you. And first, I might just say I speak Australian English, and I know it's difficult to understand, so I might lean on my colleagues to translate with the Queen's English or American English if you had trouble understanding me. But yes, it was significant and still is significant, and it demonstrates the warmth of relationship Australia and India have together. Prime Minister Modi and our Prime Minister Albanese last year met face-to-face 3 times, and that's a staggering amount of time for men or people in a senior position who are very, very busy. And also the fact that there were so many companies that came to India demonstrates the increasing business literacy Australian companies have of the opportunity here in India. When I first left Australia to take on this role, and it was only in June 2022, there were a lot of companies who still had a very antiquated view of India and doing business in India, and that has shifted exponentially over just a few years, and that has been because of the strong relationships we have. We are part of the Quad with the US and Japan. We also have a number of maritime relationships, and we have ongoing partnerships that we're building day on day with India. And the Indian market means so much to us that you are our 5th largest market. You were our 8th when I came here, and you're now our 5th. So before I leave, I think we'll be in the top 3. You'll be in the top 3.
Very optimistic. Gareth, for you, a very general question. And given that you guys had been here with us for more than 300 years, do you think educational and cultural exchanges between countries contribute to strengthening trade relations?
Absolutely.
Please elaborate.
Is that not enough? Yes. We do find education and cultural programs really do help strengthen links, people-to-people links, more cultural links, but also, as you said in the question, economic links. I think the strongest area is the education. Time and time again, we see people who have studied in the UK, which is a great education offer, by the way, so please do consider it. for yourselves and for your children.
That's a pitch right there.
I've got 5 points. We can go into that later. Well, please, but because of the strong education links between the UK and India and the growing number of Indians wanting to be educated in the UK, we have record numbers at the moment, 130,000, which is fantastic, and it's growing. But what we see is a lot of people who have studied in the UK then look at the UK as a place to do business with. Either that's exporting to the UK, importing to the UK, or also looking to invest in the UK. So certainly education and culture really do contribute to strengthening economic links, and long may it continue.
Amen to that. Jennifer, what kind of institutional architecture and policy framework would you recommend for implementation between countries to enhance bilateral trade relations and even people-to-people ties?
So with the people-to-people ties, I mean, I think that really works without a framework. I mean, we've certainly seen that since certainly when we started to see many more H1s, plus also immigrants coming from India in the 70s and 80s, once the US loosened its immigration requirements, which was a wonderful thing. And then, of course, we saw even more coming in on the uptick to the 2000s with the dot-com boom. You'll have seen in the papers something about 10,000 student visa slots today trying to be, and I can talk to you, there's a lot of misinformation in that. There are enough slots for students, I assure you. So, but for us too, it's we see year-on-year increase in Indian students coming to the United States. Some of you have heard me say this before, but 40% of all students from India in the US are from the Telugu states. And that's a staggering number. And that is a credit to strong educational institutions here, families who have exposure to the United States and don't have as many worries about their kids going abroad and spending 2 to 5 years there and then possibly working. And we just want to see that number continue to grow. Telugu is the fastest growing language in America. I can't tell you all the visas I've been doing this week for the Tana event that's taking place in Seattle. And then there's going to be another one in Atlanta in 2 weeks. I mean, it's like everybody's going. And so we do our utmost to make sure that that we can get as many people to the U.S. as we can in a way that is in coordination with our laws. When it comes to the trade part, the first part, we need to have a way where we can easily identify and then solve problems and not just have them at the very, very high level, which is where it exists right now. I have a small anecdote here that came to me from Delhi, and I did hear this too. We had a large delegation representing a lot of American states, some of them including from poultry farmers or poultry exporters. And our trade ambassador, Ambassador Tai, is very, 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 very good friends, as well as works extremely well with Minister Goyal. And we have gotten some really good things done, to include resolving almost all of the disputes at the WTO, which is really quite something. And the credit goes to them and their teams for really just plugging through on the hard work for that. But again, going back to the poultry, one of these things that these two ambassadors, these ministers, talked about was how to get U.S. ducks into India. And they shouldn't have to talk about that. That should be done like at my level, or at a different level, not at the most senior high level. What we need to be able to do is just get on the phone with each other and resolve some of these disputes without them having to go to a summit level. And that's something that we're working on. But both of our delegations are, trying to, we're getting to understand each other better, understand each other's styles better. And I think as we build trust, we'll be able to delegate a lot of those decision makers to the people who really have the best information. So that would be my advice and my desire.
Thank you so much for elaborating on all that for us. Denise, in general, how essential do you think is capacity building to further two-way economic ties between countries?
Very. And to give you some examples of that and to demonstrate why India and Australia are such natural partners. When you're looking at, and I'll pick three sectors, I think, or three areas. So one would be critical minerals. Australia is well endowed with critical minerals. We are the largest exporter of lithium. And if anyone doesn't realise it, lithium is the next sexy, or it's the current sexy. Everyone talks about lithium. And Australia is well endowed with that. On the other hand, India, with its PLI scheme, is really developing a strong battery manufacturing capability. You saw Foxconn have come here and established all of those modern technologies that we need for today's world are being made here in India, and Australia has all the minerals that can help go into those products. There is a bit of a gap actually in the middle. So we're upstream, India's downstream, and there's a midstream in the processing. And we're working with Indian companies now to see how can we bridge that gap. Chinese know how to do it. We need to do it as well.
I was actually hoping you won't say China for processing.
It's a fact. They're very good at doing that. The other areas I would like to look at is food and bev. India has a great agricultural sector, and so does Australia. We have clean and green premium products, and I think we can work really well together. There are products that are complementary. There are products that can come into India that you haven't seen before. But you also have such a huge population. I mean, Australia is tiny, tiny in comparison. And Sangeeta, my colleague here, will remember I walked in to meet a decision maker in a hospital once, and he asked me where I was from, and I said, I'm from Wollongong. And he said, you know, how many people are in Wollongong? And I said, oh, it's the third largest city in New South Wales. We've got 300,000 people. And he nearly fell off his chair laughing. He said, I have 300,000 people, 100,000 people come in my hospital every day. So we're very small, but premium produce. We brought Western Australia rock lobsters in last year. Last week, I was at an event where we had Queensland, South Australia and Western Australia avocados here. We also bring in almonds. That almonds sit well with, you know, Californian almonds, Australian almonds, Indian almonds. We can eat them all together. I think that'll probably do for enough case studies.
So what are you taking from us?
Well, that's a good point, because with ECTA, and I'm sure you'll probably ask me a question on ECTA, there are benefits for Australia and India, and Australia is really coming to the fore and we're bringing lots of products in. India needs to get on board and bring lots of products into Australia. You have pharmaceuticals, your textiles and clothing, all of your sectors, your EV cars. Cars are so expensive in Australia. If you can bring your cars in, maybe I'll be able to afford an EV car.
Well, yeah, it's a long distance, but we'll drive for sure to Australia. Gareth, what's the long-term vision for UK-India trade relations, and how are the current policies aligned with this vision?
That's probably a nice, easy one, because I mentioned earlier the free trade agreement. That's the key document to help even strengthen further bilateral trade, and negotiations are going very well. We've had 14 rounds in just under 2 years, which is that's quick for a trade agreement. We're still not there yet. There are still some small tricky issues that we need to overcome. But as both our prime ministers have said, we want a deal. We want an ambitious deal, and but we also need a deal that is in the interests of both the UK and India. But we are certainly very confident that we will be able to sign an ambitious trade agreement between the UK and India. And I was going to say, in terms of the long-term picture, at the moment, India is our 12th largest trading partner, and we'll try to get into the top 10. But Denise, it's what, 5th for Australia? And for the US? Number 1? Okay. I think if we combine all the European countries, we can have India as our 5th largest trading bloc. But top 10 would be nice sooner rather than later. And if we can become 5th, brilliant. And I think first, that's going to be a tough one because it's knocking you guys off your perch. But we'll go for top 10 in the next 5 years.
Yes, absolutely. And if SEO worked, then we would be in top 10 very quickly. Denise, what are the emerging trends in Australia-India trade relations, and how should businesses prepare to... So, with or without free trade agreement, we are still going to hit that 500 billion USD bar. Wow. Good news for all of us here who are looking at setting up, businesses abroad in the US. So please be alert to all those news snippets that you have to read, and Economic Times, please subscribe. Denise, in 2023, Australian Premier Anthony Albanese led a trade delegation to India, which, by the way, was the largest ever to leave Australian shores. What is the significance of this in terms of business between both countries?
Thank you. And first, I might just say I speak Australian English, and I know it's difficult to understand, so I might lean on my colleagues to translate with the Queen's English or American English if you had trouble understanding me. But yes, it was significant and still is significant, and it demonstrates the warmth of relationship Australia and India have together. Prime Minister Modi and our Prime Minister Albanese last year met face-to-face 3 times, and that's a staggering amount of time for men or people in a senior position who are very, very busy. And also the fact that there were so many companies that came to India demonstrates the increasing business literacy Australian companies have of the opportunity here in India. When I first left Australia to take on this role, and it was only in June 2022, there were a lot of companies who still had a very antiquated view of India and doing business in India, and that has shifted exponentially over just a few years, and that has been because of the strong relationships we have. We are part of the Quad with the US and Japan. We also have a number of maritime relationships, and we have ongoing partnerships that we're building day on day with India. And the Indian market means so much to us that you are our 5th largest market. You were our 8th when I came here, and you're now our 5th. So before I leave, I think we'll be in the top 3. You'll be in the top 3.
Very optimistic. Gareth, for you, a very general question. And given that you guys had been here with us for more than 300 years, do you think educational and cultural exchanges between countries contribute to strengthening trade relations?
Absolutely.
Please elaborate.
Is that not enough? Yes. We do find education and cultural programs really do help strengthen links, people-to-people links, more cultural links, but also, as you said in the question, economic links. I think the strongest area is the education. Time and time again, we see people who have studied in the UK, which is a great education offer, by the way, so please do consider it for yourselves and for your children.
That's a pitch right there.
I've got 5 points. We can go into that later. But because of the strong education links between the UK and India, and the growing number of Indians wanting to be educated in the UK, we have record numbers at the moment, 130,000, which is fantastic, and it's growing. But what we see is a lot of people who have studied in the UK then look at the UK as a place to do business with, Either that's exporting to the UK, importing to the UK, or also looking to invest in the UK. So certainly education and culture really do contribute to strengthening economic links, and long may it continue.
Amen to that. Jennifer, what kind of institutional architecture and policy framework would you recommend for implementation between countries to enhance bilateral trade relations and even people-to-people ties?
So with the people-to-people ties, I mean, I think that really works without a framework. I mean, we've certainly seen that since certainly when we started to see many more H1s, plus also immigrants coming from India in the 70s and 80s, once the US loosened its immigration requirements, which was a wonderful thing. And then, of course, we saw even more coming in on the uptick to the 2000s with the dot-com boom. You'll have seen in the papers something about 10,000 student visa slots today trying to be, and I can talk to you, there's a lot of misinformation in that. There are enough slots for students, I assure you. So, but for us too, it's we see year-on-year increase in Indian students coming to the United States. Some of you have heard me say this before, but 40% of all students from India in the US are from the Telugu states. And that's a staggering number. And that is a credit to strong educational institutions here, families who have exposure to the United States and don't have as many worries about their kids going abroad and spending 2 to 5 years there and then possibly working. And we just want to see that number continue to grow. Telugu is the fastest growing language in America. I can't tell you all the visas I've been doing this week for the Tana event that's taking place in Seattle. And then there's going to be another one in Atlanta in 2 weeks. I mean, it's like everybody's going. And so we do our utmost to make sure that that we can get as many people to the US as we can in a way that is in coordination with our laws. When it comes to the trade part, the first part, we need to have a way where we can easily identify and then solve problems and not just have them at the very, very high level, which is where it exists right now. I have a small anecdote here that came to me from Delhi, and I did hear this too. We had a large delegation representing a lot of American states, some of them including from poultry farmers or poultry exporters. And our trade ambassador, Ambassador Tai, is very, 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 very good friends, as well as works extremely well with Minister Goyal. And we have gotten some really good things done, to include resolving almost all of the disputes at the WTO, which is really quite something. And a credit goes to them and their teams for really just plugging through on the hard work for that. But again, going back to the poultry, one of these things that these two ambassadors, these ministers, talked about was how to get US ducks into India. And they shouldn't have to talk about that. That should be done like at my level, or at a different level, not at the most senior high level. What we need to be able to do is just get on the phone with each other and resolve some of these disputes without them having to go to a summit level. And that's something that we're working on. But both of our delegations are trying to, we're getting to understand each other better, understand each other's styles better. And I think as we build trust, we'll be able to delegate a lot of those decision makers to the people who really have the best information. So that would be my advice and my desire.
Thank you so much for elaborating on all that for us. Denise, in general, how essential do you think is capacity building to further two-way economic ties between countries?
Very. And to give you some examples of that and to demonstrate why India and Australia are such natural partners, when you're looking at, and I'll pick 3 sectors, I think, or 3 areas. So one would be critical minerals. Australia is well endowed with critical minerals. We are the largest exporter of lithium. And if anyone doesn't realize it, lithium is the next sexy, or it's the current sexy. Everyone talks about lithium. And Australia is well endowed with that. On the other hand, India, with its PLI scheme, is really developing a strong battery manufacturing capability. You saw Foxconn have come here and established all of those modern technologies that we need for today's world are being made here in India, and Australia has all the minerals that can help go into those products. There is a bit of a gap actually in the middle, so we're upstream, India's downstream, and there's a midstream in the processing, and we're working with Indian companies now to see how can we bridge that gap. Chinese know how to do it. We need to do it as well.
I was actually hoping you won't say China for processing.
It's a fact. They're very good at doing that. The other areas I would like to look at is food and bev. India has a great agricultural sector, and so does Australia. We have clean and green premium products, and I think we can work really well together. There are products that are complementary. There are products that can come into India that you haven't seen before. But you also have such a huge population. I mean, Australia is tiny, tiny in comparison. And Sangeeta, my colleague here, will remember I walked in to meet a decision maker in a hospital once, and he asked me where I was from, and I said, I'm from Wollongong. And he said, you know, how many people are in Wollongong? And I said, oh, it's the third largest city in New South Wales. We've got 300,000 people. And he nearly fell off his chair laughing. He said, I have 300,000 people, 100,000 people come in my hospital every day. So we're very small, but premium produce. We brought Western Australia rock lobsters in last year. Last week, I was at an event where we had Queensland, South Australia and Western Australia avocados here. We also bring in almonds. Almonds sit well with, you know, Californian almonds, Australian almonds, Indian almonds. We can eat them all together. I think that'll probably do for enough case studies.
So what are you taking from us?
Well, that's a good point, because with ECTA, and I'm sure you'll probably ask me a question on ECTA, there are benefits for Australia and India, and Australia is really coming to the fore and we're bringing lots of products in. India needs to get on board and bring lots of products into Australia. You have pharmaceuticals, your textiles and clothing, all of your sectors, your EV cars. Cars are so expensive in Australia. If you can bring your cars in, maybe I'll be able to afford an EV car.
Well, yeah, it's a long distance, but we'll drive for sure to Australia. Gareth, what's the long-term vision for UK-India trade relations, and how are the current policies aligned with this vision?
That's probably a nice, easy one, because I mentioned earlier the free trade agreement. That's the key document to help even strengthen further bilateral trade, and negotiations are going very well. We've had 14 rounds in just under 2 years, which is that's quick for a trade agreement. We're still not there yet. There are still some small tricky issues that we need to overcome. But as both our prime ministers have said, we want a deal. We want an ambitious deal, and but we also need a deal that is in the interests of both the UK and India. But we are certainly very confident that we will be able to sign an ambitious trade agreement between the UK and India. And I was going to say, in terms of the long-term picture, at the moment, India is our 12th largest trading partner, and we'll try to get into the top 10. But Denise, it's what, 5th for Australia? And for the US, number 1? Okay, I think if we combine all the European countries, we can have India as our 5th largest trading bloc. But top 10 would be nice sooner rather than later. And if we can become 5th, brilliant. And I think first, that's going to be a tough one because it's knocking you guys off your perch. But we'll go for top 10 in the next 5 years.
Yes, absolutely. And if SEO worked, then we would be in top 10 very quickly. Denise, what are the emerging trends in Australia-India trade relations, and how should businesses prepare to capitalize on these trends from the India perspective?
Emerging trends in our business relations, particularly trade and investment. I've already touched on the critical mineral space. There's a lot of interest there in that area. But when we're looking at Indians are very tech savvy, incredibly tech savvy. Australia, we like to think we're tech savvy. We're definitely first movers. We will take on any new technology. Actually, I shouldn't say we. I won't. My children will, and they will teach me how to use the technology. But Australians are always quick to take on new technology. So I see that as one of the areas, the trends in that two-way trade. Also, skills development. India is growing at such a phenomenal rate, and there is a big demand for skill development. And it's within the businesses, it's within the industry. It's not necessarily the education side, it's that skill. And I can think of, say, an Australian company called Entura, and they build dams. They're in hydropower. They also have a phenomenal skills training, and they're here in India working with the hydropower institutions around India and upskilling a lot of the people in the organisations. So there are a few areas in which I see those trends happening. I think that will do for there. Thank you.
So I hope you're all making note of all that. We are recording the session and you can go back and listen, but please make note of all those sectors. This is for all of us. Jennifer, what are some key sectors where you see significant investment opportunities for US companies in India and vice versa?
So we are really blessed to have close to 200, if not more. My colleagues here can talk about that. American companies working in and around Hyderabad or in Telangana. And I joke that I'm a professional lamplighter because I go to an inauguration like every week. And it's really, it's amazing to see. And we're not necessarily coaxing these companies to come. They're coming on their own accord. Like my colleagues Raghavan and Frank certainly help with answering questions, guiding people to those who've come before, so who can help them understand where's the best place to set up business, where's the talent pool. We certainly have tech our tech companies are going to be growing more and more here. And it's not back office any longer. These are global, these are GCCs. And that's a wonderful thing to see. We have the pharma sector here is actually one thing where I think its investment in the US could even grow. We are fully dependent on India for our generics in the United States. And we're worried about supply chain disruptions as we saw during COVID. And so we have a very close tie-up here with the pharma industry to understand, where they're getting their ingredients, what they're putting together, and how we can easier get those into the United States. The defense manufacturing is actually something that's very exciting here. We have 2 joint ventures with Boeing and Lockheed Martin. Multi-brand retail, I think if we could get Amazon or Walmart to India, and I know some people don't want to hear that, but I think it could revolutionize sort of the logistics sector here and the consumer goods sectors. We're dreaming big here. I think India we see this market here as one that's only growing, and it's the skills that American companies find here. Certainly, yes, it is less costly for some companies to do business here, some parts of their business, than to do it in the United States, and that's good. We're taking some of your best and brightest, through to our companies and to our schools as well. But I think that's a two-way street, which I love to see. So many are coming back actually because the economic opportunities that are here. We see so many Indian Americans or Indians who've studied in the US who've come back here to get into their families' businesses or to start their own or to become the head of Micron or to become the head of Google. And that's because the opportunities are so good. We were meeting today with a prominent American equity, private equity investor. They have more than $1 billion of exposure here in India, and they want to triple that. And the American companies who invest with them want to triple that. There are things that hold that back. Certain investment uncertainties. It can change from government to government or state to state. The ease of investment or the ease of understanding how much capex you'll have to invest into a certain sector. But the appetite is huge. And then, of course, we do want more Indian exports to come to the United States. There's a lot of amazing Indian companies who've done so well and provided real American jobs. I could say green technology would be one. There's amazing companies here who are looking to invest in the US, and we want to help them. Denise mentioned EVs. Absolutely. I've visited 1 or 2 really exciting companies here in Hyderabad who are doing that. And if they could do it at a scale, in fact, they're already operating in the United States. But to do it on a larger scale, on a global scale, is something that you're trying to help them with, but would also welcome. We don't need to do it in the US. We'd love to just export it from here.
That's wonderful news. Just last year, we had a global EV summit here. You would have been part of it, I'm sure. And
Priya,
there's a lot of
sorry.
interest in EV happening. And there is a global AI summit coming up, in July. Oh, yes. Thank you so much. We can partner with you. What do you say? Can FLO partner with the Global AI Summit for Government of Telangana?
Priya, I'm sorry. Could I just interrupt for a second? I'm really sorry to do this because I forgot one really important area in the last question you asked me, and I'd be shocked if I didn't mention it. Australia, our R&D capabilities are phenomenal. Traditionally, we have sold our IP offshore. Now what we're finding that we're doing is, particularly in India, collaborating on our R&D and coming into India. When you look at clean energy, if you look at battery storage, if you look at areas of green steel, there's a lot of collaboration in that R&D space. So thank you for giving me that 2 seconds. I just thought I'd better remind everyone of that.
This question is the same for all 3 of you. Because we are a women's organization, you can't get away without answering this. So how does your country or government encourage women entrepreneurship and support women-led businesses? We'll let Gareth answer this first.
Can I go last? Are you talking about women-led entrepreneurship here in India? Can I talk about that? Yes. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. In the UK, we've just actually completed a strategy on supporting women-led businesses. And therefore, it's just been published a couple of months ago. And it sets out a number of areas where we're looking to support women entrepreneurs, because we recognise that we're still far away about where we want to be when it comes to women entrepreneurs. And it's all too many familiar issues about access to skills. One of the most important ones is access to finance. Women-led businesses have a ridiculously low ability to raise funding, so that's something we want to try to address.
Globally, I think that percentage is 2.
No,
Funding for women entrepreneurs is 2% globally.
We're higher than that, so it's something to celebrate, but no, it's still, I think we're just pushing double digits, so it's, and it really does need to be addressed, because any business needs access to finance, and the fact that women-led businesses have the lowest is, it's not sustainable. Finally, also in the UK, I think one area we're looking at is how to encourage more women-led businesses to support other women-led businesses. That link is still not fully there yet. all of you know about the Old Boys Club and how well it works in the UK, and I think we can.
Legends are made of it.
Legends are made of it. We should patent it. It's all ours. It's not happening in the female sector, and that's something we need to try to overcome as well by encouraging more opportunities for women entrepreneurs to meet, to talk to each other, and also set up pathways that they can actually support each other, because it is a really tough world for women-led businesses, and too often the men are just able to overcome some of the issues they face by supporting each other, and that's something we need to see improving in the UK and globally. Here within in India, how we're trying to support female entrepreneurs. We do a lot with WeHub. It's a brilliant organisation here in Hyderabad, supporting startups and female entrepreneurs. So that's something we do a lot with WeHub. And it's also coming to events like this, talking about meeting women entrepreneurs and seeing how we can develop more links with the UK.
Thank you. How about you, Jennifer?
Thank you. I mean, I think that probably, I mean, I can't think of really many countries who don't share the same structural and systemic problems that have kept women entrepreneurs from access to finance. I can't really speak to a national strategy on the US part. We don't have, for example, a Ministry of Women's Affairs. Not that it would necessarily fall under that. We certainly have in our Economic Bureau and plans and strategies and all of these things. But I think where it really happens is at the private sector, and it works through mentorship, and it works through what I've seen as women venture capitalists getting together. I've seen this in Silicon Valley, to include many women actually from this part of India as part of them, who are looking to fund and to mentor and to raise up other female-led enterprises across the United States. I think that also, as we try to encourage, we see a lot of the students who are coming to the United States. Most of them the majority are young men. And they're coming largely in the STEM, computer science, engineering. What we want are more young women to come and to get those skills, get that access to, again, mentorship, tutorship, study, and then ultimately finance. As equally, and that's something that we're actively working on right now. But here, in India, like Gareth, we work with local organizations here to strengthen the MSMEs, because that's where a lot of the women entrepreneurs are. They're in that sector, and in fact, I did not know this, but in the United States, 80% of all new jobs created in the private sector are in the MSME sector, which is, I guess it makes sense if you think about it deeply, but on the other hand, I just didn't realize the number was that high. So I think working together with policy change, with getting women better access to resources and educational options is something that we'll continue to work on for quite some time. And it's not a very pretty picture. But we recently had and actually, since some of you were there, a We Connect show where we brought in American investors. A lot of them were women from big companies to come here to talk to women entrepreneurs from MSMEs. And I learned there that these companies, some of the Fortune 500 companies in the US, when they're sourcing products, less than 1% of their products are sourced from women-owned businesses. Less than 1%, not even a single digit. And that's appalling. And so working on things that are grassroots still, that seem small, are things that we're committed to, because I do believe that they're going to grow and to bear fruit going forward. But I welcome I welcome your thoughts. I welcome ideas on how to best partner with you here and with your networks in the United States. This is, truly a global calling.
Thank you, Jennifer. It is no consolation that, we are also in the same position, but I hope things will become rosier for women as we go along. Denise.
I guess, Jennifer, as you said, things aren't rosy and Australia still has a long way to go as well. But we do have a venture capital fund supported by government that's run by women and provides funding only for women. That's a start. We do have some benchmarks in terms of on boards. We have to have a minimum of 25% women on boards. In Australia now, I think it's more like 35%. In government, it's over 50% now. So there's more women on boards in government than there is men. It's fabulous, yeah. And I think also it's not just about that financial support. It is financial support, but it's helping women get back into the workforce. Australia has always had a very generous, well, not generous enough, and it's getting better, but we get 12 months maternity leave, 3 months of that is paid. Recently in the budget, that was moved up to 20 weeks. So it's getting better, little bit by little bit. So that support there to help women who are often the primary caregivers to get back into the workforce is there. I'd like to also say that paternal leave has increased as well. So the gents can now have 2 weeks off to look after their children when they have newborns. Here in India, I'm very proud to say that I work in an organisation that is almost 50% women. And in our 5 sectors of focus, 2 of them are led by women, but our most senior person here is a woman as well. So I'm very proud to say that. And there was one last thing I wanted to say, and it's just escaped my mind. No, I'll have to leave it.
You can always get those 2 minutes from me again. But it's lovely to see Australia leading by example. And I think we all should get there sooner than later. Gareth, in Telangana, how are you weaving yourself into the fabric of the state? And not just with your attire, I mean. And particularly in the business and trade ecosystem. And I want you to answer this in Telugu.
She's going to give you an award.
Unfortunately, that's not possible.
Maybe 2 sentences. Start.
I can't do any. Can't do any at all. I've been really, really lazy. I do apologise. I really do apologise.
No issues, please.
Is that it? You want to do it in Telugu? I can't do it in Telugu. Therefore, there's no answer.
I can insist, or we can teach you as we go along. But yeah, tell us how you're becoming part of the Telangana's DNA.
One is being here and being out and about. We are a small Deputy High Commission, but we are quite active. We have most of our team, it's trade and investment focused, so that demonstrates where our priorities are in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. And we're making good inroads if we go back to our headquarters in the UK and talk about where some of the growth of our trade links and our investment links with India are coming from. We will find Telangana and Andhra Pradesh quite close to the top of those lists. So we are being very active and we are seeing some really good results from that. Other ways, I don't think I attend as many events as Jennifer, but I do join a fair share as well. I think one other way where we are trying to weave ourselves into the state is with some program and project funding. A lot of it is focused on climate security, renewables, electric vehicles. We do that for 2 things. One is to strengthen our links with Telangana and Andhra Pradesh in this important area of trying to tackle climate change. But we also see that there will be, going forward, opportunities to work with both of these states on issues such as electric vehicles and renewable energy. So that's another way of using some of our project and program funds to develop work that eventually will strengthen links in other ways, including with businesses.
That was quite technical. You couldn't have said all that in Telugu. So.
Only the last bit.
So, Jennifer, you did speak about MSMEs. So taking that forward, in recent times especially, India's growth story has been fueled actually by MSMEs as part of the Make in India campaign. And many of our SMEs have demonstrated the potential to grow into large corporations or MNCs. What is US's stance on establishing business relationships with Indian SMEs?
I mean, it's extremely positive. And our Foreign Commercial Service, also represented here by Raghavan, that's exactly what they work in, is strengthening these ties. And I can see like some of these 80% of new companies growing in the private sector in the US coming up can start to deliver or create some of the small products, the niche products that perhaps can be sent here for our companies who are doing Make in India, for example, in aerospace or defense. That's an option, or that's an idea. That's a real possibility. But last year, I think FCS has worked with more than 100 American companies to connect them to Indian partners, most of them SMEs. And we have a Select USA program that's coming up. Every year, the ambassador leads it to Washington, D.C., where we bring Indian businesses from all around the world. But India last year had the largest delegation of all. And we're hoping to get to that again this year to meet with potential American investors or partners. And that takes place again every year in June. And so one of the things that Select USA does also is sponsors a competition for startups with some seed funding. And Zodia Tech, which is a Hyderabad company, won that this year. So we really hope to see more companies get that kind of seed funding so they can become NCs in their growth development. But I mean, after this, I do encourage you to stop by our booth and talk with our representatives about Select USA and the other types of links that we are equipped to help you make or help those who work with you make, or the organizations who you sponsor to help them make with the United States.
That's lovely, Jennifer. Right there, an offer from USAID to help us with seed funding. So ladies, please stop by the trade desk. And Denise, the Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement, the CECA that you mentioned briefly, between India and Australia has been in the making actually for many years now, right? So how close is it to fruition? And with a wider scope than the current Economic Cooperation Trade Agreement, actually thanks to which India's trade deficit with Australia has fallen by 15%. Would this new agreement serve as a gateway for closer economic ties between the two countries?
Okay, I'd first like by saying it's a little bit daunting being a young country sitting up here next to mammoth nations and well-established nations, the UK, India, and the US. But I'm not bragging, but we do have a free trade agreement with India. It was a curtsy. So our ECTA, our Economic Cooperation Trade Agreement, was signed in December 2022 with India. What that meant was just over 85% of our goods came into India at either a zero tariff or reducing to zero over 4 years. Conversely, Indian products are going into Australia. 95% of Indian products are now coming into Australia at zero tariff or reducing over a number of years. So if you're not looking at Australia, you need to look at Australia now, and we want to partner with you. So the Economic Trade Agreement has made a phenomenal difference. As I said, we've moved from 8th to 5th. You're our 5th largest trading partner. And if you take coal out of the equation, and I shouldn't say that bad word. I wish I would, yes. 70% of our exports to India are made out of coal. But if you take that out of the equation, that's dropping. But our trade with India increased by 35% in the last financial year. That's a huge increase. And that's thanks to ECTA. Now, CECA, always get it wrong. Commercial, Economic and Cooperation Agreement. Thank you. I just say CECA and then you forget what the acronym stands for. It's going to ensure that some of those tougher negotiations, or we have specialist people involved in those tougher negotiations now. It's the services. It's those elements that we didn't get over the line through ECTA. The discussions, understandably, are a little bit on hold at the moment. India's got this really important thing happening. I think it's an election at the moment. So nothing's happening on that IPO. That's second. So once the Indian elections are over and before the Australian elections happen, that's when we're hoping that we will cement CECA. So sometime between June this year and June next year, we're hoping we will sign and agree on CECA, and that will then bring us to the brink of a beautiful trade agreement where all of our goods will come in and out. Sorry, that will never happen, but we will negotiate to the best of our abilities to make sure there are benefits to both Indian business coming into Australia and Australian business going into India.
Wow, that sounds extremely promising, and I'm sure Indian businesses are looking forward to CECA coming in place. And let's again go with you. In what areas does Australia have a comparative advantage that could be better leveraged in trade with India?
Shall I say critical minerals again? Critical minerals, yes, critical minerals. Another area which we are doing very well, and you might have seen it in the press, is quantum computing. Please don't ask me to explain what that is. That's about as far as my expertise go.
We'll let Gareth answer that. In Telugu, please.
Really fast computing.
But the Australian government, through the budget that was just released this month, is investing $1 billion to ensure that Australia creates the first commercial quantum computer. And we are, as I've said before, we are very good at R&D, haven't been amazing at commercialising, but we have commercialised the cochlear ear implant. Everybody would know of cochlear ear implant. Wi-Fi came from Australia. The lady who speaks on Google Maps, she's Australian. Fire. Did you know fire was invented in Australia? Fire, yep. FHIR, which is a digital language for health records, so fire was created in Australia. And so we have a number of innovations. So I think it's really a market where India is as amazing at, we are a little risk adverse, whereas India just goes for it. They throw things out and make it work. And I think, again, that's that beautiful partnership that Australia and India can have together. We have a lot of R&D capability, and India can help commercialise that, and we get it going.
I think she's talking about the Indian jugaad. Jennifer, in 2019, this is a little tricky, India's status as a beneficiary developing country under the generalized system of preferences, which had actually afforded us a lot of preferential tariffs on exports to the US. This particular benefit that was with us was revoked by the US. Why did this happen? And do you think our status as the preferred beneficiary would be restored?
Sure, certainly. I remember this very well. I was actually in Mumbai, and one of the sectors that was probably most affected by this was the jewel sector, and the jewelers, then the bringing in how do you say, the cultivated or finished jewels into the United States. So what Congress revoked this in 2019 in response to high tariffs on many U.S. products, which still exist, and other non-tariff barriers that made it difficult for U.S. businesses to do business in India. Many of those still exist. There were questions about intellectual property rights, especially from some of the pharma companies and as well as manufacturing in the U.S. There are the need to kind of bring some of that IP without either being compensated for it or having that be part of the allowance to work in India is a bit restrictive and anti-competitive. And we had many discussions on GSP leading up to the 2019 decision to revoke it. I mean, so many. This was a major topic, and some of you probably remember this. But we didn't get the assurances that we need that the US companies would have as equitable access to Indian markets. So this was a congressional vote to revoke it. Whether it will be restored is also a congressional mandate, a congressional decision. We haven't talked about it in a while, so I don't have any idea necessarily on where it might be on the horizon. We've never taken it off the table, but just as long as we get the assurances, or American companies get the assurances that they'll have the same access and tariff relief. One thing comes to mind, medical implants, for example, coming into India have been subject to very, very high tariffs, and our negotiating hasn't really led to very much there. So I don't know about its restoration, but I know that it's, you know, it's something that we continue to discuss on a very frequent basis.
So, just a little statistics, if you can give us, with and without this particular beneficiary developing country position, is that making a lot of difference between the trade relations and the numbers?
So I would, it wasn't very big to begin with. When you look at overall trade, if you talk to it's generally helped the more small business sectors. So if you talk to them about how it affected their bottom lines, they probably would say it made a big deal. But then the overall, larger scheme of things, it didn't. So it wasn't, it carried a big splash, but it really was not a big component of the bilateral back and forth. But we, of course, understand that for those who lost it, it was a loss.
So let's hope that it'll come back.
Yeah, Congress, but I mean, this is absolutely something that we will definitely keep talking about.
So does this depend on the elections?
It could very well. I mean, so many things depend on the elections right now. Unfortunately, every elective year, it feels like it just becomes a slow year to really talk about anything other than what are the next 4 years going to be like. It's actually very frustrating.
So are you hoping for a new president or a newer president?
Of course, I hope for a fair democratic election where the results, whatever they are, will be accepted. As I know the results here in India will, because you have experts at fair elections, and nobody's really calling those into question here. And I really hope that we don't get that same fix that we had the last time.
All the best. And the last question to Gareth. The 2030 roadmap for India-UK future relations, which you mentioned, it definitely has a very ambitious target of more than doubling the trade that we have now. What are the elements that specifically focus on this, and are they already under implementation on either side?
I think the main element, of course, is the FTA, as already discussed. That is the key area which will help reach our ambitious trade target. I think with it, under that, there are various sectors that we are keen to focus on and see grow. And Denise and Jennifer probably mentioned most of them already. Defense and security. We don't have a relationship with India like the US do, or some of our European partners. So that's an obvious area that we can try to grow. We already do a lot on healthcare, but again, there's probably more we can do, especially in the research and development area. Services, we are a services-driven economy. We would love to see more services penetration between the two countries. Tech, innovation, science links, especially new areas such as AI, semiconductors, machine learning. I already mentioned areas such as renewables, that's electric vehicles. Again, there's a massive opportunity for more collaboration between the UK and India. And then finally, always my favorite topic, retail, fast-moving consumer goods, I think that's the term, and in particular, good old Scottish whiskey. That will be one of those key things for the free trade agreement, to try to lower down some of those customs on alcohol, as we see there's massive potential there. If you look at the UK and Indian economies at the moment, We are a low tariff economy, whereas India, there are quite a few high tariffs. We certainly hope that the FTA will help redress the balance, though we certainly appreciate that India is still very much a developing economy and will want to protect some areas, but we would certainly like to see a pathway where some of those tariffs will come down to help boost further bilateral trade between the UK and India.
Thank you. I observed through the conversation that none of you actually mentioned tourism. So is that so? Because anywhere we see either it's Chinese or Indians, and you haven't spoken about.
I'm ready for tourism. We certainly don't.
Is that a thrust sector for you? If you had to pick 3 top sectors, which would that be? I mean, each of you give me those 3 top sectors where you would want to do business with India and where Indians would want to do business with India. We'll go with you, Denise.
Did you want to go first, Gareth? You can.
I feel discriminated against. No, carry on.
3 top sectors. Number 1 would definitely have to be education. Australia is a fabulous destination to send your children. We also, Deakin University and University of Wollongong are the first 2 universities in the world who have been given permission to set up a foreign campus in India. Yeah. The second, and I know you want me to say tourism, and I'll explain why I won't say tourism, but the second would be food and ag. Clean, green, amazing produce, high security on our food production. And the third will be critical minerals. It's just, we are like the prettiest girl at the ball. Everybody wants to dance with us with our critical minerals. So it's definitely the top 3. Why I'm not saying tourism is, from a trade and investment perspective, tourism doesn't fall under my portfolio. So if you have the tourism person here who does 100% tourism, they would say, and we have a whole department that does that. But for anyone who hasn't been to Australia yet, you need to go. It is an amazing country. Please come and visit. And if I'm back home, come and see me in Wollongong.
I won't repeat any of the areas Denise has covered, because I imagine they're all going to be quite similar in terms of where we're going for top 3. So maybe you'll get a top 9. I just don't want to repeat. Though, granted, we do not have any critical minerals whatsoever, but we do have a critical product called whiskey. That is very important. In terms of, I look at this in terms of where we can do better, where we can do growth, and that's probably why we haven't talked about tourism already, because tourism is going really, really well, and it's on that perfect path. If it's not broken, you don't need to fix it, and tourism is brilliant. Same with what we're seeing with student numbers into the UK as well. It's really, really strong. Where we want to see growth. I know I've been joking about whiskey, but alcohol, certainly for the UK, alcohol exports to India, we see that as a massive growth area. Electric vehicles have been mentioned previously in this discussion. Electric vehicles, renewable energy, again, a big sector for growth. And then finally, I mentioned it earlier because that is the strength of the UK economy, more services collaboration between the UK and India.
How about from India to the UK?
You tell me.
Asking you. So which are the sectors that you would welcome into the UK? Where do you lack, and which are the ones Indians can export to you?
If you look at it at the moment, because we are a very, very low tariff economy, we're quite open to most Indian exports. So I don't think that's one of those key issues. If you're looking at where the debate is, it's more about mobility of people, and that's one of those. I would say for Indian negotiators within the FTA, I expect mobility is one of the top issues they raise.
Thank you for that. And Jennifer.
Denise did mean education, but I can't let that go without saying education as well. It's a growth sector for us. It's a $9 billion annual industry for us, Indian students coming to the United States. I mean, those numbers make me proud, actually, because it helps me make the case for more visa slots. But it also helps us all make the case for, let the people-to-people ties figure themselves out. And they've done that beautifully so far. And that's also with tourism. I actually haven't really thought about it. I wish I could see more. I wish Hyderabad were better known to be on the tourist circuit route, because, and it's obviously for people who don't know India well, they think Golden Triangle, they think Goa, perhaps they think Kerala or some beaches, but they don't. To me, they don't think of Leh and Ladakh. They don't think of Madhya Pradesh. They don't think of Telangana. It's three of my favorite places. So it's just not on people's radars. I mean, I think some people, I just say this in jest, but I think some people still have like a 1960s hippies view of India and ashrams and like Americans coming barefoot here. And it's not like that any longer. I mean, ashram, there still are, and I've spent time at an ashram and I loved it. So but it's not, I think people's ideas of the vastness really need to change. And, we have now, we're opening more and more Indian consulates in the US, and part of their mandate is going to be selling India as a tourist destination to Americans. Green tech. The green tech is where we cooperate. We've just done about 2 years ago, our Defense Finance Corporation did a $500 million investment into its First Solar, which is in the Chennai district, to compete against Chinese domination of the solar panel market. We need solar panels in the US too. We want India to make them. And we will buy them. This is the neat thing for me, but it's come up on a number of occasions, which is Ayurvedics and health and oh, thanks. This has just come up. And this is not something I think our trade organizations would say or anybody in Congress would say is a major opportunity or something that we want India to really think about. But what it comes up to me a lot is the Ayurvedic market in the United States, the market for holistic and natural goods. We've already, adopted so many of the wellness traditions that have originated in India, and maybe barbarized a few of them, like hot yoga. But there's a big market there for Americans are really thinking about what they're ingesting and the purity of it. And India has the reputation of, a culture of these pure, clean, and natural products. And so that is really something I hear a lot, whether it be for cosmetics, whether it be for spices, whether it be for poultices or other types of herbal remedies. I think that's a growth market.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Denise, and thank you, Gareth, for that wonderful conversation. And now we'll open up the floor to the audience. Am I moderating this?
So much to all the three speakers today for giving us such a beautiful insight into trade with their countries. Incidentally, before this event, I was Googling what does India import the most from all the three countries, and the only answer was crude oil. And what is India exporting the most to all the three countries? It was diamonds and jewelry. So yeah, I'd like to open the floor to the audience now for any questions that you may have. Please keep your questions short and pertinent and limited to one per person. Thank you.
So hello, everybody. It's wonderful and always exciting to be amongst such empowered women, especially those on stage. Gareth Owen, never mind. I guess it's a lonely place for you out there. I don't know. But this question goes out to Ms. Larson, and good afternoon to you. I have come back to Telangana. In Telangana, we say, this is my Janbhumi and my Karmbhumi. Janm is where I was born, and this is where I work. And so I'm really looking at one of the things that we did talk about, and it came fairly towards the end, and the emphasis being on education. While there have been many government-directed questions and question and answers there, I'm going to come closer to home on a more people-to-people tie. We had a wonderful collaboration with the Claflin University in South Carolina, as you know, that got its grants. And they collaborated with the Vishwa Bharati University in Shantiniketan over a fabulous thing. So what they did was they took these grants, and coming back to many of the areas that you discussed on the MSMEs and small businesses, they used these grants to skill women in small businesses, women entrepreneurs in small businesses. So coming closer to home, Ms. Larson, in Telangana, which is my state, how can you, as consul for the state at the current time, how can people like the body of FICCI or an individual who has the wherewithal to come and talk about what are the things that you can help us do in terms of finding such funding or trying to find some collaboration where we can really do it right here at home?
Are you talking about skilling per se, or are you talking about collaboration with higher education institutes and what they bring?
Well, skilling would be part of the collaboration.
So we actually have, as part of our it's what we call a 2+2. It's essentially our foreign ministries and defense ministries meet every year or every year and a half and come up with a 14, 15-page communique. But we do have we have a working group on higher education, and we have one dedicated solely to skilling. And that is to look at how we can, with limited in-house resources, can work on skilling programs, both here, mostly here in India, actually. This is where the desire has been. We do have a small grants program here that we operate from the consulate. That's in our public diplomacy section. And we've done a number of grants to different organizations who do work on skilling. It has, the most recent one I'm thinking of actually was with an organization that works with Muslim women, small entrepreneurs. So we do have a wide option. They're not huge grants, for example, but we have competitive grants every year and all year. And so I'm happy to put you or anybody in contact with Alex, who runs that for us. It would be, I listen with envy when Denise talks about the 2 universities that have opened up in the in the SEZ. I would love to have more American students coming to India. They do come in small numbers. They come on their own, some of them with very small assisted programs from their universities. But when I was in college, I did a year abroad in Cairo, and that was facilitated fully by Berkeley and the American university there. And it's life-changing. And so it doesn't have to be for a fully 4 years of study or 2 years of a master's. Just having American students come here for 6 months or 1 year would be a really better place than where we are right now. And so we're working with local universities here to try to create campuses that would offer degrees that can be transferred, which we're not quite there yet. But that's something that for me is a personal, personal project and a personal it's very important to me. So I hope that answers.
Hi, good evening to all the esteemed guests on the dais. So my question is to Ms. Jennifer. Before that, I just want to introduce that in our country as well, India, we are coming up with a fast-growing green technology, and being a part of the organization where we are producing bioethanol through grains, and then compressed biogas, and then green hydrogen, and then SAF as well, the sustainable aviation fuel. So my question to you, Jennifer, to you is, being the representative from US, how much are you open to import all this from the companies like us maybe, or from India as such, in trade?
So we, our Assistant Secretary for Energy, which is the highest ranking energy official in the State Department, was here about 6 weeks ago. And we took him to look at some of the exact technologies that you're thinking about. And he was incredibly helpful in getting on the call with DFC, getting on the phone with Exim, and putting people in contact for funding for these types of things. And with that type of funding, as it grows here, then yes, we will buy it. Would we love to have it stored, the green hydrogen stored in the United States? We've got plenty of open space for that. But we understand that there are regulatory issues with states, for example, that don't always make it easy for foreign companies to come in and to buy land and to convert that. So this is something that we're absolutely excited about.
We have a question there.
Hi, I think all of you know I'm Jyotsna. A common question to all three of you as to what... There is a problem that all of us are aware. The world is talking about inclusivity, diversity, gender balance, women on boards. What initiatives and efforts are you doing in your position here in Telangana to ensure such issues are handled, addressed, and promoted further in your companies that are present here? And what is your government doing in your country to continuously push this? That's my question to all three of you.
I'm happy to take that first. And I won't talk just about Telangana, but what I personally am doing here in India. As per the introduction, I'm covering the energy and resources space, and it won't surprise you to know that most events I go to, heavily male-dominated. What I personally do is I walk into a room and I find the 1 or 2 women that are in the room when I'm speaking. I go up and I get their name and I get onto the stage and I say good morning, and I mention the 2 women by name and gentlemen. It's funny, it ruffles the feathers of the men sitting on the stage. They don't like it at all. But it's incumbent on me to call it out. It's something that people try and hide and pretend it's not there. As many of you know, I am from Bangalore. I'm in Bangalore. I was at an event, a clean energy event, where there were 6 chairs on the stage, and there were only 5 people on the agenda. And 5 men got up, they were the ones on the agenda, and a woman sat on the last chair. No one recognised her. Everybody introduced the men spoke, and the woman just sat there, and it was horrible. And I called up the agency that put it together and said, it would have been better if you didn't even put her on the chair. So I think personally, every single one of us needs to call it out when we see it. Men and women need to call it out. What is my organisation doing? I explained to you what is our country doing, that more benefits to support women going back to work, so I probably won't repeat that. But Gareth or Jennifer?
Sure. As mentioned, in the UK, we recently issued a strategy about supporting female entrepreneurs and businesswomen. I would encourage you all to look online on gov.uk. To have a look at that. In terms of between the UK and India, I'm very proud to say that within the FTA discussions, there is a chapter on these very issues about gender equality and supporting female entrepreneurs and businesses. So that's something we're very proud of. I understand when we do sign the FTA, this will be the first FTA India signs with a gender chapter within it. So that's something we're very proud about.
So I'll speak at the consulate level first, which is that we have our own DEIA council, and that's a fully volunteer council, which looks at things that are largely internal to, do we have the correct makeup of what does Telangana look like or what does India look like? Do we have the correct makeup of that in the consulates, both whether it be gender, whether it be religion, whether it be your last name? And so that is, it's interesting because people define DEIA very differently. A US government definition, and I can say at least for the State Department, has taken this on as more than lip service, but it's been painful really watching it because, I mean, just have events, do this, do that, and you feel at the end of the day, perhaps you're just kind of representing only to represent. But it's, I applaud our headquarters for taking it seriously and taking it on very sincerely. We recently, we're lucky to have a big AmCham group here, and last year it was, put on a DEIA workshop for all AmCham members and talk about best practices, whether it be how to hire, how to make inclusive spaces if you're having differently abled or trans or LGBTQI communities. How do you retain? How do you recruit? How do you retain? And how do you use everybody's skills just across the spectrum. So it's something that we talk about on an ongoing basis. I do appreciate what Denise said about coming in and often being the only female. I'll just joke about it, but we have a policy from Delhi with our ambassador. We have a DEIA working group, and I'm the chair of it. And we will not take we won't take an invitation to anything that doesn't have at least some semblance of equal representation. So he won't go to a manel, for example. And we ask organizers ahead of time, who's coming and why don't you have more representation? Understanding that there are limitations, understanding that there can be limitations, but we try to make it a point that this is something that we're looking for if you would like us to be part of it. And Gareth, I know that this probably feels very awkward for you. This is probably the first time that you've been on a FAML, a WAMO. I see that. I have two men with me from my consulate.
The reason I asked this, what your government is doing, that is because I recently interacted with the UAE government, and I was so amazed, pleasantly amazed, to know that they have the world's first gender balance council that is looking into the gender balance at the government level, at the corporate level, at the private sector, and at the education level, which is wonderful. So they're genuinely trying to solve it ground upwards.
We have a question from Ms. Shubhra.
Yeah, hi, good evening. This is Shubhra Maheshwari. I'm a chartered accountant. So my question to all of you, first of all, it was a very, very interesting afternoon. I'm very thankful to all of you to give up your time. Thanks to Priya for weaving this business association brainstorming session. Now, my question to all three of you is that I come from the financial industry. We offer financial services. And I would love to explore, especially as Gareth said, that services is something that we can work on. We have already begun working with offshore accounting in US. UK and Australia, I'm yet to begin. Unfortunately, even in US, there is no formal system, there's no structured approach for a service agreement. So we are basically working through the CPAs of US. Now that's more like a brokership. So is there a structured thing that can be created in terms of service alliances between the countries, wherein a service provider from India can easily be available on your records for a US entity or an UK entity or an Australian entity to reach out to? Because our manpower, our expertise is unparalleled any day, so it's always economical for entities in your country to reach out to us. Coming to Gareth, I'm in UK the next 3 weeks, so I would be happy for a help in terms of a structured way by which a service provider can reach out.
I can try that one. First of all, on the broader question, as I've mentioned a few times, within the FTA, collaboration on services will be an important element. So that's one area. In terms of your specific question about your visit next week, I would encourage you to look at an organisation like UK IBC, which is the Business Council, and I'm sure they'd be able to help you in terms of providing some links and names and organizations to reach out to.
Wonderful.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so very much. And I would also look at that help from Australia and US as well.
Certainly, I can't speak to your exact question. I do know, however, that, I mean, we have our H&R Block, for example, has a very, very large presence here, and its work is solely with American companies and American individuals. And so we certainly use professionals here in India as service providers for American companies and needs. How to structure that more, I don't know, but perhaps afterward we could talk with some colleagues. But yeah, we also have very robust USIBC, for example, would be our, and USIEF. I'm getting that wrong, but there are two big ones, and they're kind of rivals, so I have to talk about both of them. But they have a lot of input and information on exactly what you're talking about.
And SEEKR, part of SEEKR is negotiating that service agreement. I'm not part of the SEEKR negotiations, but I would expect financial services is in there. What I might also suggest to you is my organisation, the Australian Trade and Investment Commission, is an organisation set up to help Australian companies export to the globe. India doesn't have an organisation like that. So you need to be lobbying your government to have a similar organisation, because I do hear it all the time, companies coming to me saying, how do I get into Australia? How do I get into America? You need an organisation like ours in India. And I know Invest India was looking at it, but it needs for you to be saying this to your government. We need help, and we need an organisation like our trade and investment organisations to help you do the same.
So I think right there is a policy intervention idea for us, right, from FLO. We should take it up with the government.
We'll take one last question. We have one here.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, all of you, for being with us here today. Over the years, there's been a rapidly growing rise in the sentiment of the Indian dream and made in India and concepts such as these, especially in the youth, right? Very akin to the American dream from the yesteryears. So my question is open to anyone in the panel. For folks such as all of you who are holding such unique positions, right? How have you found yourself adapting to this changing sentiments in order to do your respective roles better? Thank you.
Can I, if I can ask just to clarify, are we talking about, are you asking about how are we adjusting to seeing India rightfully rise on the global stage?
Yeah, I think that's a much simpler way to look at it.
Yeah.
If you're saying that you've not sensed that sentiment, I think that's also an answer. But
no.
there's been a lot of that we see that internally over here, especially in the youth. I wanted to see how is it from your side and in your positions.
This is India's century. That's just plain and simple. And me in my position here, us in our position throughout the country, we know that. I mean, Prime Minister Modi, President Biden, they have robust interactions. We have multiple times said that India is like our ride or die. And we're not treaty allies, we understand that, but there is enough binding us together and enough that's really important going forward that we absolutely cede the space to India. I mean, we're your advocate for expanding on the Security Council. So I say wholeheartedly that I applaud this. I think it's time, and your demographic is your destiny.
Thank you so much, everyone. I do know that there are many questions. I saw some hands raised, but we have a trade desk set up from all the 3 nations right behind in the hall. So if you have any further questions, you can take them there. Thank you so much to our guest speakers for an enlightening and informative session. I'm sure each of us will immensely benefit from the valuable insights shared. May I now request Senior Vice Chair, Ms. Pratibha, to deliver her vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone. So spread your wings and fly high, ladies. As we close this enlightening event, on behalf of FLO, I extend my gratitude to our esteemed speakers, Jennifer Larson, Gareth Owen, and Denise Eaton, who have offered valuable insights into the intricacies of international trade, empowering small businesses and entrepreneurs with the knowledge to navigate global markets successfully. We thank our respected speakers for their expertise and guidance to let us know the markets for businesses in their respective countries. To our audience, thank you for your participation. Let us carry forward the spirit of collaboration and partnership as we venture to forge stronger economic ties across borders. Thank you, past chairs and events team, for your continued support. We thank our sponsors who have been there in our endeavors. Thank you to our platinum sponsors, Tira by Tibarumals, initiative sponsors, McLean Group, and gold sponsor, Oro Jewels. Please join us for high tea.
Who are in large number here today to please step up for a picture with our guest today.